Get ready to rumble. Schilling Show Unleashed on the Seven Thunders Media Network. Former city councilor, husband, father, and community watchdog. Your host, Rob Schilling.
Well, thanks very much for joining us on this special Facebook Live edition. We're exposing wretched Ralph Northam, the governor of Virginia, and his COVID tyranny, his anti-science proclamations, and we're going to get into his proclamation today. I first of all just want to say you can support this podcast online. We can't do it without you. Go to shillingshow.com and click on the Patreon button. We appreciate your support. Now, I heard this phony get on the air today or sent out this video press release, and I saw so many problems with it that I wanted to bring it to you immediately. So we're going to jump into this. I'll ask you to share all this with your friends and share it broadly because we're bringing up things that nobody else will. Let's take a look at his opening statement here in today's COVID restrictions being announced in effect on Monday. Here we go. Wretched Ralph Northam.
Hello, everyone. I'm Governor Ralph Northam. I want to tell you about some new steps we need to take to combat COVID-19 in Virginia.
All right, I want to start out immediately with this phony, wretched Ralph Northam walking out there or standing there with a mask on and speaking through the mask for 2 or 3 seconds and then taking it off. You talk about virtue signaling. What a fraud this guy is. Why would he wear a mask and then take it off? Science! Why didn't he just start without the mask on? Because he's trying to send you a signal. But if you analyze what just happened, it makes absolutely no sense. If there's no one there in the room with him, why did he have the mask on in the first place? If there's someone there in the room with him taking that video, why did he take the mask off? He's being reckless and endangering people around him, according to his own words, if there is anyone around him. Let's continue.
But across Virginia, coronavirus cases are on the rise. Our statewide percent positivity is going up.
This is a great situation here, and now we have to ask ourselves, why are the numbers on the rise, and can we trust the numbers? Let's go to the source, which is the New York Times. That can hardly be impugned by anybody on the left. They love the New York Times. This is a story that appeared in the New York Times. Your coronavirus test is positive. Maybe it shouldn't be. They talk about the test being too sensitive and too slow. Let's go on and get a little more detail here about this story that appeared over the summer at the end of August in the New York Times. It says that some of the nation's leading public health experts raising concern over coronavirus testing. The standard tests are diagnosing huge numbers of people who may be carrying relatively insignificant amounts of the virus. In other words, lots and lots of false positives. In fact, we heard in the news today that Elon Musk was tested 4 times in a day, and 2 tests came up positive and 2 tests came up negative. Who or what are we to believe? Again, this coming from the New York Times. It's a very interesting article, and I suggest you look it up and read the details. In fact, we just posted this up on our Facebook page. Let's continue.
We're taking action to slow the spread. We will limit gatherings to no more than 25 individuals. Restaurant alcohol sales will end at 10 p.m. and restaurants will close by midnight.
All right, this is going to be absolutely devastating to the restaurant industry, which is barely hanging on by a thread right now. So we're going to stop serving alcohol at 10. Does that mean every drink that happens after 10 is dangerous and every drink that happens before 10 is fine? It's just like when you walk into a restaurant without a mask on. Does that mean it's just fine if you're sitting down without a mask, but when you're standing up, it becomes problematic? This is ridiculous. And the same thing with closing the restaurants down at midnight. Do you turn into a pumpkin? Or is there some other problem that happens after midnight in restaurants? Limiting them to 25 people is going to kill a lot more restaurants. Again, the ones that are just barely hanging on. Smooth move, wretched Ralph.
All essential businesses will follow the requirements on social distancing, cleaning, and wearing face coverings.
All right, what he didn't tell you here is that they're going to be sicking the Virginia Department of Health, government agents, just like the swarms of agents that were described in the Declaration of Independence that King George was sending out to harass people and eat them out of their sustenance. This is what wretched Ralph is doing now. He's essentially militarizing or putting into law enforcement, the Virginia Department of Health. They're going to go after, it sounds like now, the proprietors of the businesses, in addition to the people who are in the businesses. Somebody walks into the grocery store without a mask on, someone like me, for example. Will the grocery store manager be thrown in jail, subject to a Class 1 misdemeanor, as Wretched Ralph has threatened here? This is going to be horrible for everybody involved. It will create a lot of conflict and solve no problems. Let's continue.
Face coverings are one of the best tools we have to fight COVID-19. So everyone needs to wear them, age 5 and up.
All right, this is sickening to me. Age 5 and up. You know, face coverings are destroying the humanity of individuals in this country. If you look at somebody with a mask on, you cannot read their face. You don't know what's going on behind the mask. You see a little sliver of their eyes if you're lucky, and that's it. Kids spend very little time face-to-face these days, a lot of social media, particularly now that they're not in school, and when they are, they have to have a mask on. But if you can't look at someone's face and you don't even know what humanity is, what does that say about the future and where we're going? And all of this, kids down to 5 years old, hey, why are you stopping at 5, Richard Ralph? How about the babies that you let die on the table? Maybe before you do that, you ought to put a mask on them to protect everybody else. All right, so what does the CDC find about people getting coronavirus wearing masks? Well, the study finds the overwhelming majority of people getting coronavirus had masks on. Conducted in the United States in July, found that when they compared 154 case patients who tested positive to a controlled group of 160 from healthcare facilities who were symptomatic but tested negative, 70% of the case patients were contaminated with the virus and fell ill despite the fact that they, quote unquote, always had a mask on. This is a very recent CDC study, Wretched Ralph.
Including in school and child care settings.
All right, so now we're going to take it in school. We're going to teach these kids that they have to be obedient to the government, not only in school, but in child care. That means the real little kids are going to be taught that you bow down, and when Governor Wretched Ralph walks in, you better do what he says or the jackboots will be after you. Let's continue. The Mail Online News say this is a paper coming out of the United Kingdom. It generally goes very far to the left. They did a study out of Spain showing that children are spreading the coronavirus 6 times less than adults. Just fascinating, isn't it? So we're going to mask up all the little kiddies down to 5 years old. I tell you, there's something diabolical behind all of this. Let's continue.
We know that these mitigation measures work.
So if we know that the mitigations work according to Wretched Ralph Northam, how do we know that and what do we know? Well, here's a study from American Institute for Economic Research. Lockdowns and mask mandates do not lead to reduced COVID transmission rates or deaths, a new study says. Outside of pharmaceutical interventions, in other words, things like lockdowns, closures, travel restrictions, hey, any of this sound familiar? Stay-home orders, event bans, quarantines, curfews, and Wretched Ralph Northam mask mandates do not seem to affect the virus transmission rates overall. So if you're trusting the science, why don't you look at that study? Science! And then, of course, there is the human cost of lockdowns, this appearing in the Federalist on October 21st of this year. What happens to people when you put them in lockdown, as Wretched Ralph is doing again here in Virginia? Well, you get depression and mental illness. You get increased suicides. These are all borne out by studies and statistics. Delays in preventative care, including more deaths from cancer and postponed vaccinations, drug and other opioid abuse, domestic violence and child abuse, cardiovascular disease and stroke due to unemployment, reduced average lifespan to unemployment, and of course, mortality increases from recession and poverty. Gee, thanks. These are the human costs of the lockdowns, and he never said a word about it.
I am confident we can get our numbers back down, but it requires all of us to make smart choices.
All right, I love that he says he wants us to make smart choices, and yet he doesn't give us any choice. He's already threatened that he'll throw us in jail for a year and that he'll fine us up to $2,500.
In Albemarle County, if you violate the face mask order or have a gathering of more than 50 people, it could be up to a Class 1 misdemeanor.
How can we make a smart choice if we're just subject to whatever the whim is that you tell us you want us to do on that day?
And it's spreading when people ignore the science and don't think they need to wear a mask inside. Careless behavior by one person puts everyone they come into contact with at risk.
This is subjecting people to the mob. So he's telling people, hey, if you see somebody in the grocery store or over at Lowe's or somewhere else without a mask, they're putting you at risk and they are subject to your wrath. This is so dangerous, I can't even tell you. But you know what he's doing. He's turning one part of the population against another for his own political power. But then he says, follow the science. But what does the science say about face masks? Let's start with the director of the Centers for Disease Control, Dr. Robert Redfield, who was questioned in February by a member of Congress. This is videotape from earlier this year. What happened when she asked him if you're healthy, if you should wear a mask? Again, going back to February. A very knowledgeable man, obviously, the head of the CDC. What did he say?
Should you wear a mask if you're healthy?
No.
Okay, so that was short and to the point. You shouldn't wear a mask if you're healthy. The head of the CDC, a medical doctor, said that in February. Well, what changed along the way? Let's find out. All right, this is coming from USA Today in June, just a couple of months later, and then updated later on in June from USA Today. The CDC notes a cloth face covering, this is a quote, may not protect the wearer, but it may keep the wearer from spreading the virus to others. So first it was, hey, well, don't do that. Don't wear a mask at all if you're healthy. Then it is, well, it's not going to protect you, but you're helping others. We heard all of that. And then what happened after that? Just a few short days ago, this coming from Daily Wire, but you can find it all over the place. All of a sudden, the CDC Changes again on November 11th says, if you wear a face mask, it does protect you from COVID. Do you believe any of this? Is the wool being pulled over your eyes?
Science!
I know everyone is tired of the pandemic and tired of restrictions on our lives.
Actually, we're tired of you. I'm so tired of seeing this guy, this tyrant, wretched Ralph Northam. I wish he would just go away. I wish we had a rational governor in Virginia, but unfortunately we don't.
But for the sake of your family, your neighbors, your coworkers, our healthcare providers, and even the person you pass in the grocery store, please keep following the guidelines.
One more final bit of fraud perpetrated, anti-science fraud. Even for the sake of the person you pass in the grocery store, you got to follow the guidelines. That means wearing a mask. Now, what does the science actually say about someone you would pass in the grocery store? This one coming from Click on Detroit. In October, the CDC defines close contact as being within 6 feet of an infected person for a total of 15 minutes in a day. It has nothing to do with passing by somebody in a grocery store. What a fraud and what a liar this governor is. Unbelievable, just unbelievable.
Stay healthy so you can help keep others healthy. Thank you so much.
There goes the virtue signaling, putting that mask back on for whatever reason, I don't know. Hey, visit us online at shillingshow.com. Support these Facebook Lives and our podcasts by supporting us on Patreon. Thank you so much for watching tonight. This is important information. Please, please, please share it with your friends and neighbors. I brought the facts out. I brought the science out. Wretched Ralph did nothing of the sort.